Hey everyone, Mike FITZ here with Explore.org. Thanks for being with us this evening, or this afternoon, or this morning, or this night, wherever you happen to be around the world. Ranger Naomi and I are standing by to give you a live play-by-play broadcast about the bears and salmon that we're seeing in front of us at Brooks River. Ranger Leon working behind the scenes. We'll get started with that in less than 4 minutes at the top of the hour. Hey everyone, this is Mike FITZ with Explore.org, the world's largest live nature cam network. Welcome to Brooks Falls in Katmai National Park, Alaska. I'm standing here with Ranger Naomi Boak from Katmai National Park. Ranger Leon Law is behind the scenes, and it's a beautiful yet drizzly evening here at world famous Brooks Falls, one of the best places in the world to watch brown bears fishing for salmon. And then during this play-by-play broadcast, Naomi and I will try to narrate the bear and salmon activity that we'll see in the water. We'll talk about the individual bears and their behavior. We'll talk, of course, about the salmon. They're going to be a major part of the storylines tonight. And anything else that maybe grabs our attention. So sit back, relax, have a good time. And Naomi, I definitely think the abundance of fish is on a lot of people's minds. It's something we haven't really seen very much so far this summer.
What a difference a few days make. I mean, there are salmon fillets everywhere. And what that means to me is that the bears are so full that they're only eating the fattiest parts of the fish, which is what they need, and they're leaving the remains. It's just so incredible to see.
And right now we're taking a look at a wide view of Brooks Falls. Brooks Falls itself is less than 50 yards wide. It's probably maybe closer to 45 yards wide from bank to bank. We're looking at a young adult female on the lip of Brooks Falls right now. This is one that we've watched come back to the river every year since her first summer with her mother. This is number 910, and she's looking, Naomi, just like her mom on the waterfall.
Yes, her mom was Bead Nose, a much beloved bear and expert lip fisher, but look at 910. She's catching them and letting them go. I think 910 is pretty full, don't you think?
Yeah, this is a situation where I think we are seeing a bear play with its food. And a lot of times people will be like, well, why is the bear not eating the fish? I mean, they have a limited stomach capacity. I know it can be hard to believe because they can eat a lot of salmon, but they do have a limited stomach capacity. And 910, she's practicing her craft here on the lip. Maybe she's looking for choicer fish. Maybe she likes that one versus some of the others that she had caught and released. But bears, I also think, Naomi, and this is something that I've mentioned before, but I'd like to reiterate again, I think bears have this instinct to catch vulnerable prey, no matter their hunger level. So if they're feeling sated like they are right now, because there's so many salmon available to them, that doesn't mean they can easily shut off that instinct, because they see food, and they live in a world of feast or famine, and that often dictates, how they're behaving at the waterfall. So we'll see bears, not only like 910, but also like 747 and many of the others, just kind of catch fish and let them go right now. I think it may be a little bit of some playful behavior, but also they have that instinct where they just can't switch it off. And in wolves, that's been described as surplus killing. It's kind of like a cold term for something that is just genetically programmed within those animals. And I suspect that the same thing happens in bears.
But the good news about that is that this salmon is not going to waste at all. Injured or dead salmon that they may catch and turn away, or all these salmon fillets all around us. Younger bears, cubs, the bears that have been grazing around here, all those are going to be eaten. The birds, the gulls, the eagles, and also we find salmon DNA in the flora here. Every bit of this gets used. So it may seem wasteful, but it's not really.
Yeah, in this ecosystem, there's really not a thing called waste. The salmon are not only, bringing billions of calories into this watershed as far as energy goes, but also, billions of pounds of fertilizer too. When you're considering the whole run of Bristol Bay overall. And the bears, if this wave of salmon moves through and we see fewer salmon at the falls later tonight or tomorrow, we'll see bears work up an appetite once again very easily, and they're going to clean up a lot of these leftover salmon parts. Now, a younger bear here that I don't recognize moving towards us with its salmon. You can see maybe a few salmon fillets, partly eaten salmon carcasses in the water there. This one's moving maybe off like 910 did to a more secure location.
A safer place to eat its fish, even though there aren't a lot of other bears around that might steal the fish. Again, that's sort of learned behavior, instinct, because when there aren't a lot of fish around, younger bears really have to protect what they've caught, and we saw a lot of that earlier this week when there weren't many salmon, and even the bigger bears were taking what they caught off the river.
So quite a different circumstance from just a few days ago with the abundance of fish. Another, looks like young bear eating a salmon downstream of the falls here. I'm going to move away from that though, Naomi, and look at the big male that we have on the far side of Brooks Falls. I don't think this is one we've been able to highlight during our broadcasts so far. And it's one that maybe if even longtime bear cam watchers might not be familiar with, because it was just identified last year. And that is bear 147. You can recognize him by his distinctive ear shapes. His right ear a little bit shorter than the other one, very wide set, well filled in body. So he's been eating well, carries a lot of fat reserves from last year. We haven't seen him come to this side of the waterfall very often, where people like us happen to stand on the wildlife viewing platforms. That makes me suspect that maybe he's not habituated to the presence of people. That could change as he gains more experience here at Brooks River. But sometimes with some bears, not even a lifetime of benign experiences with people is enough to change their behavior for them to feel comfortable around the presence of people. So he moved up on the hillside over there. Look for him to come back later this evening and throughout the month of July. So that's, again, number 147. A big adult male that was first identified last year. That brings a question up, Naomi. Where was he, all those years? Because he's a fully mature bear. He's not like a young adult. I mean, he's kind of a full-grown bear, it looks like.
Well, there are a lot of places that bears can earn a living in Katmai. There are around 2,200 bears in Katmai National Park, and in the immediate area, there are lots of small streams and rivers, and other rivers that larger than the Brooks River. So that bear could have been earning a living many places nearby, and happened to find this place. We had bear 18, who you viewers call Humphrey, who arrived a couple of years ago, and you can tell by their behavior, as Mike just described, that bears who aren't very familiar with this particular river have to figure out their place in the hierarchy, where are good spots to fish. So it's not only that we don't recognize the bear, but also the behavior is indicative of whether they've grown up around here or are used to fishing here. I mean, if you think about Lefty, who is a favorite bear for bear cam viewers, he wasn't a falls bear. He was a fall bear for a long time. And his first time at the falls, he didn't know how to catch fish. So keep your eyes open for both bears you don't recognize and their behavior as well.
So right now, only one bear in the immediate vicinity of Brooks Falls. This young bear is sitting on a rock. This is an independent juvenile bear, so not fully mature. I'm not sure of its ID. A lot of the younger bears are particularly hard to identify, so I often refrain from trying to figure those out. Most of the bears that we do see at Brooks River, though, in contrast to 147, have been identified in previous years, in fact, many previous years. And a lot of the younger bears that we see at Brooks River, their first experiences with this place were with mom. And I think that gives these bears some advantage, because they were introduced to this place by their mother. They've seen the dynamic, not only between bears at the waterfall, but also had maybe some experience around people, for instance, so that habituation process. It gives them maybe a little bit of a jump start over a bear who is living somewhere else in Katmai and disperses into this area, discovers that it's a good place to fish, but maybe isn't used to dealing with, a super high concentration of individual bears, trying to figure out where it sits in the hierarchy, and also trying to figure out how in the world it's going to navigate this environment with people.
Yeah. So I have a question kind of on the opposite side of that. So these young bears who are maybe subadults or 3, 4, 5 years old, young adults, so they've grown up in an era on this river where there's been a lot of salmon starting in mid to late June. So what happens to them? Everything they've been taught was thrown out the window this year because the salmon were so late.
Well, they were expecting fish, of course, but bears are adaptable. They're opportunistic. They're also very patient. We saw, I think, the bears expressing those things while they were waiting for like this big surge of fish. Definitely, when there's fewer salmon around, the competition that the bears face between each other for food is more intense, and we saw that for sure. But they were able to adjust. They were able to wait. And I think the ones that stuck around and were patient are reaping the rewards, because there's more salmon in the river than the bears can eat. And as we look around, Naomi, there's not any bears fishing the falls right now. This is peak bear time, and they're not here because they're all full.
Right. That's a question we get a lot. There's all that salmon, and where are the bears?
And it's a little counterintuitive when you look across the seasons here, like across the whole summer. There are more bears here when there are more salmon. So looking at it like on a month-long scale, for instance, more bears here in July because there's more salmon here. Salmon are also accessible here in September, so more bears in September. But on a day-to-day basis, it fluctuates greatly depending on the absolute abundance of salmon that day. Because again, bears are hungry but not infinitely so. So they just get full and they have to sleep it off for a period of time. And that's what we're seeing right now. We're seeing a super abundance of fish. The bears are mostly full, so they don't, and they also, the ones that are hungry don't have to work very hard for their food. So they come down here, they fish for a few minutes, they eat some salmon, they end up leaving. So on a day-to-day or hourly basis, you can see a significant shift in the number of bears, depending on the number of salmon overall.
Yeah, and also, so that means that we, when we're walking the falls trail, run into a lot of bears because they're full, they're not here. Maybe they're subadults running into other subadults, or they're sleeping. We run into a lot of sleeping bears on the falls trail.
So a small bear coming into the vicinity now right below us, maybe one of the ones that caught a salmon and moved out of our line of sight before. Sniffing a partly eaten salmon carcass there. The bears frequently investigate all the salmon carcasses just to make sure that there's not something, tasty that another bear left behind.
That bear is so small it can't hold itself in that current there, which, looking around, but the bears are creative. That bear may sit there and try and fish in another way that a bigger bear might not do.
And you described that bear as small, Naomi, but that bear is probably bigger than us.
Yes.
I would think.
I hope so.
So yeah, it probably weighs more than both of us. It's probably, it's hard to say, but big yearling cubs here on the Alaska Peninsula. So bears in their second summer, really big yearlings, have been documented to weigh about 200 pounds or more in midsummer. So that tells you when there's a lot of salmon available to these animals, how quickly they can grow. So an independent bear like this, who's probably at least in her third or fourth summer, certainly pushing, 200, 250 pounds or more. And that's bigger than some reproducing black bear females in parts of North America. So these are, this may look like a small bear, but it's certainly not a small animal, relatively speaking, compared to humans or compared to many other bear populations in North America.
Yeah, it's just that being here, we get used to being around the giants like 747, who I would say is over 1,000 pounds at this point.
Yeah, he's a monster. Hopefully he'll come back. We saw him walking downstream before the broadcast. It looks like maybe he was courting a female bear. So we'll look for him to maybe wander back up this way. These moments where the waterfall is not dominated by larger adults are important opportunities for bears to practice their craft. Younger bears who don't have the size or maybe the disposition to try to compete with the larger bears for the preferred fishing spots. So they can get in here, they can try different fishing techniques, for instance, and they can try different things. And that younger bear moving away from this adult male that's coming to the lip of the waterfall, this is number 911, Naomi. I only saw him once this year so far.
I haven't seen him at all. So
yeah. So he's been around, but maybe just biding his time in the forest. I recognize him by sort of like, again, his relatively shed out flanks right now, especially around his shoulder and neck region. He also has a lot of scars around his face and neck. I think with the camera here, it's not really going to pick up those details, so you just have to take my word for it. But he's a bear that I think was identified as an adult as well several years ago. Good belly on him, certainly carrying fat reserves from last year. I don't remember if I've seen him fish the lip of the falls though, so maybe we'll... I mean, he knew where to go, so obviously he's had experience there. We'll see how well he can catch fish. But if he hadn't fished there before, I think he would have been much more hesitant when he approaches the lip, and that's something that we see with younger bears.
Oh, successful.
Yeah, it didn't take it very long at all. So let's see how quickly he eats this salmon. That'll give us an idea of how hungry he is, whether he's had a lot of fish today.
Yeah, is it a possibility that perhaps he went away for a while when there weren't salmon and he's maybe just returned? I assume there are a number of bears like that.
I think so. Just because, we didn't see him in a few days doesn't mean they're 100 yards in the forest just sleeping it off. They could wander for, several miles and then come back and see, well, this other salmon stream that I was at, there's no salmon there either. Maybe I'll come back to Brooks River and see what's going on there. So we ate only part of that fish.
Ate most of it, but he didn't get the whole thing.
I love watching the skill of bears on the lip of Brooks Falls, the strength. Of course, they have to resist the force of the water. They're locked in there with four-wheel drive, so it's fairly easy for them to do that. But each one of these fish, 4 to 8 pounds on average. You can definitely see in the jumps, some salmon are bigger than others. But it's difficult to catch fish in your mouth, and you have to practice a lot to get good at it.
Have you tried, Mike?
No, I never have tried.
Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that.
I've never actually had enough, courage or foolishness, it depends on what you want to call it, to go all the way to the edge of the lip of Brooks Falls. I've been in the falls, I've investigated it at times of the year where there aren't bears around, and it's interesting to see the falls from that perspective. But I've only been within, let's say 10 feet of the lip of the falls because it's slippery up there. And I don't want to end up landing on my backside and sliding off if I, misstep. So 2 fish for him already, but only partly eaten.
I do always marvel at the skill of bears, not only being able to catch fish up there, but just stand up there and not fall over.
You notice that the salmon jump really from just a particular spot on the falls. They can, for the most part, only successfully jump the falls if they're launching themselves from right below where that bear is. And that's that plunge pool we call the jacuzzi. And if you take an even closer look on that spot, you'll see that they launch themselves from the place where the water boils back up to the surface. So sort of like that dividing line between where the water hits the lower end of the falls and where it circulates back up. That circulation of water, that upwelling of water, gives salmon an extra boost. It's like having a bit of a tailwind, and they're able to launch themselves to greater heights and at greater speeds. And that probably is a big help when you're trying to get up this 6 foot tall waterfall.
We do see salmon jumping on the other side, do they ever have success? Do you watch
Rarely
them?
have I seen them have success over there. Maybe when the cams zoom in sometimes on the far side, you might get a good look at that, but I don't think salmon can get enough of a head start really over there to jump at that spot successfully, very often, I should say. The jacuzzi, it's very deep. I'm not sure how deep it is, but it's over my head, right where the water comes down and hits the surface. I was in there one time, and I kind of crawled along the base of or walked along the base of the falls, again, when there are no bears around. And I was curious to know how deep the jacuzzi was. So I got to almost where that bear is standing, and I was hanging onto the rock wall, and I just sort of like let go and I slipped in, and I got tumbled around like I was in a washing machine. And it was a very uncomfortable experience. It felt like I was in there for a long time. I was probably only in there for like 2 seconds before I got spit out. But it was, it demonstrated to me that environment down in there is, it can be a little chaotic. The fish navigated quite well. It's another reason to marvel at their strength and coordination in navigating that watery world.
Well, especially now because they're approaching the very end of their life cycle, and they haven't eaten in a while, right, Mike?
They haven't eaten, since they entered fresh water from the ocean. So they're done with eating. All of their migration and spawning efforts from this point forward are going to be fueled by their internal energy reserves, their protein reserves, their fat reserves. So salmon display a remarkable endurance, given the fact that they have to swim so far and work so hard to get to their spawning site, all without eating.
Now that's number 3 in just a few minutes for that bear.
Yeah, so stripping the skin off of this fish, not really doing a real careful attempt to high grade the fattiest parts of the fish, and we haven't talked about that, Naomi, but that's a big reason why there are partly eaten salmon carcasses around, because the bears are selecting for the fattiest parts of the fish.
And why do they do that? I mean, they're eating, they're wanting calories, but it's specific kinds of calories that they need, right?
Yeah, they can gain fat mass faster if they're eating a lot of fat. They're very good at digesting fat, very good at digesting sugar. They're good at digesting protein too. But when you eat a lot of protein, you're gaining muscle mostly, for if you're a bear. So eating fattier parts of the fish will help them gain the specific type of body mass that they're looking for to survive hibernation. Because fat is their currency. That's how they survive hibernation. They're not surviving winter hibernation necessarily in their muscle reserves. They need those muscle reserves to remain intact through hibernation so they can come out of the den strong. And those in the springtime, a lot of the foods that they eat in the spring and at this time of the year too, with this, salmon are not only high in fat but high in protein. They're going to be, gaining, lean protein mass, muscle mass, but they're also, by selecting those fattier parts of the fish, gaining a lot of fat reserves and body mass. There's an interesting study done. There's some studies done recently from the Pacific side of Katmai National Park looking at the type of body mass that female brown bears were gaining over the course of the summer, and they found, those high protein foods that they eat early in the summer, maybe like clams or sedges, for instance, those are foods that help the bears gain lean muscle, but it doesn't help them gain fat. It's the foods later in the summer, like salmon, for instance, or berries, that help them gain fat mass. So another salmon for 911 on the lip of Brooks Falls.
And another thing I would note with 911 on the lip of Brooks Falls, I don't know where this bear fits in the hierarchy here. He's a large male, fairly recently observed in the last few years here, but that's a coveted spot for a bear like, say, 151 Walker, who is fairly dominant this year. So, but this bear has the opportunity to just stay there and catch salmon after salmon. because the rest of them are sleeping off all their catch.
If you're a bigger male, it's easier for you to hold your ground and compete for those preferred fishing spots. But you still got to compete with other big bears for it when they're around. So yeah, I mean, he's taking advantage of an empty waterfall to eat as many salmon as he can catch. And if 151 comes back, we saw him before the broadcast fishing the Lipperbrooks Falls. If he comes back, we might see these two compete over the Lipperbrooks Falls. It's quite likely, though, that they'll just ignore each other and go to different places, because the lip of the falls isn't the only place where you can catch salmon right now.
Speaking of, if we look downstream, we can see a few bears in the riffles. And just to let the audience know that we are on a public viewing platform, so if you hear voices behind us, it's not your imagination. There's public here, so just to let you know that.
There's several bears downstream of Brooks Falls right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that I can see. The sixth one for you at home is going to be kind of difficult to see through the trees. These bears looking for fresh fish. They're probably also scavenging some of the partly eaten salmon carcasses that drift downstream. The riffles is an area when the waterfall is full of the more dominant adult bears, where we will see a lot of younger bears, mothers with cubs, fish. We'll also see some of the dominant adults down there, like 151 Walker, for instance. 128 Grazer will fish there. She's one of our more dominant female bears.
Now, Mike, when you look at those bears, are they comfortable with each other, or what's going on there?
Hard to say. The one bear is slowly approaching the other. They're both kind of approaching each other. I'm not seeing any yawning. We don't hear any growling right now that would indicate, maybe that they're both feeling defensive. But at this distance, I'm not quite sure. If we were at the riffles platform, we might have a better view. But you can often hear bears growling at one another when we're standing up here at the falls from the riffles. And right now, again, there's so many fish in the river, I would be surprised if one of these bears tried to push another off of a fishing spot down there. But it's possible. They're bears. They're going to behave like bears, whether there's a lot of food around or not. Yeah, so that kind of answered the question. A little bit of swatting there, a little bit of growling. Probably couldn't hear it over the sound of water closer to us, but I could pick it up. And that spot right in the middle of the riffles is one of the more preferred fishing spots in that vicinity.
Well, there is an eddy there too, right? So it's kind of like a mini jacuzzi, and it traps fish in it.
Those could be bears that know how to fish that spot, but maybe don't know how to fish at Brooks Falls. And that could be a reason why they're trying to compete over those fishing spots.
So there's another bear coming from the top of the falls. Mike, we might take a look at that bear.
Yeah, we'll pan up there in just a second. There was a bear also that looked like maybe it was going to climb a tree. So I was looking in that vicinity, but it looks like that bear has chosen not to for the moment. So we've got 911 on the lip here, moving away because one of the more dominant bears at Brooks River is moving in, and that's number 856. So the bear closest to us, 911, is certainly not comfortable with the presence of 856. You can see him moving away even though they're separated probably by 30, 35 yards or so. That's 856's reputation. Maybe they tangled this year off camera, we didn't see. But that's the advantage of being a dominant bear like A56. You can basically just walk through the river and almost everyone else will get out of your way.
Right. I mean, and it could have even been last year when they tangled, or, I mean, just, it is his reputation.
Yes, his reputation precedes him. So he's scanning the empty waterfall right now. He's probably already had several salmon today, so again, probably not very hungry. But I think since he's here, I think we'll likely see him come down and try to fish.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll get in the jacuzzi, maybe he'll get in the far pool.
Yeah, those two spots that he prefers, so maybe he's scanning to see what his opportunity is in those spots.
A56, if you're not familiar with him, I recognize by sort of his wide set, kind of light brown ears. At certain angles, they look kind of almost triangle shaped, from back here at least, in the way he's standing right now. Also a very large bodied bear, a little bit of a reddish tinge to his fur, hasn't started to really shed much of his fur yet.
And he licks his lips.
Yeah, as a behavioral characteristic, look for him to do that. He's not the only bear that will, but he's one of the few that we see consistently licking his lips. And we're about halfway through the broadcast, so it's a good time to reintroduce ourselves. My name is Mike FITZ with Explore.org. My co-host today for this play-by-play on July 13, 2021 is Ranger Naomi Boak from Katmai National Park.
So it looks like 856 is maybe making his way over to the jacuzzi, which he likes a lot.
Yeah, and you see that young bear kind of trapped against the falls, does not like this situation at all. Looking to climb the waterfall, can't do it. Now just making a break for it through the deeper water.
There.
So clearly that bear, that might be 910, Naomi, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, clearly she was trying a different spot, didn't quite recognize the approach of 856 until she was like, whoa, this is way uncomfortable for me. And I'm just going to get the heck out of the way any way I can. The waterfall didn't work for her. She'll probably not try that route again. 856, meanwhile, made no overt attempt to actively displace that bear. He was just walking through. And now he's kind of sitting on the edge of the jacuzzi, so not actively fishing really at the moment. We'll see him, if he wants to fish, he'll move a little bit further into the plunge pool. Now 856, he's a large-bodied bear. He also has just like a really giant head. That's one of the ways you can tell adult males from adult females, especially younger females. Adult males have really thick necks, very large heads in proportion to their body. You see these other younger bears that we've been watching this evening, their heads aren't nearly as big as 856. And their necks also are not nearly as thick as well.
He, 856 is also a very tall bear, which you can't tell as he sits on the edge of the jacuzzi, but he is very tall, so he holds his weight well.
When he's standing on all fours, his shoulders, I bet they're 4.5 feet off the ground. I mean, he's a tall bear for sure, well filled in. He's eaten well, over the years. He's done pretty well for himself. He has been the river's most consistently dominant bear for about a decade. He's taken a step back this year in the hierarchy, only a slight step back, I should say. He's still extremely dominant, but this year he'll yield to 747, which we hadn't really seen him doing in the past. Now he sees 911 over here, to my right. 856 with a direct approach, ears forward, direct stare at 911. I'm going to pan over to see 911 right now. He's kind of doing a little bit of a cowboy walk, but walking away. Doesn't seem like he really wants to tangle with A56. So this is an example of A56 trying to reestablish his position in the hierarchy, at least over this one bear.
Yeah, we haven't seen him do that much this year.
So 911 walking under the walkway away from Brooks Falls. 856 now running in that direction. 911 running away. There's another bear up on the hill that was just kind of a victim of circumstance that was getting the heck out of Dodge.
I kind of laugh and think that it's probably 8-3 because he's always in the wrong place at the wrong time, but we didn't see that bear, so we don't know who it is.
It could have been 821 if you're keeping score at home. You coming back now? Okay, that was 821 running away from those bears there. So I'm trying to look behind me. I don't see neither of the big adults that were moving through in that area. Sorry for the shaky camera work. I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm not necessarily paying attention to where the camera's pointed.
So yeah, they disappeared. Yeah. Have you seen 856 do that? Chase another adult male that far this year?
Not really this year. Seems like this year he's less prone to do that, even when we saw fewer salmon. But again, he's, even though he's not the most dominant bear at the river, it doesn't mean he's, completely out of the game. I mean, he certainly is big. He's still assertive, willing to throw his weight around. I think that was a great example of that. And this, I think, is a young adult male here coming to the waterfall, number 812. We were looking at 911 on the lip of the falls. 911, a full-grown bear. You can see that there's a big size difference if you just have that mental image of the large pot-bellied 911 on the falls versus this bear, who also has a nice belly on him, but isn't nearly as tall or as long.
So there's a substantial growth period for bears. We talk about subadults as teenagers a lot, and teenagers kind of, they stop growing at the end of teenage years pretty much. But with bears, they have a number of years to grow, right?
Yeah, after bears reach sexual maturity around 5 or 6 years of age, they will continue to gain not only length and height, but also body mass. And in this ecosystem, especially into their early teens. Adult females, once they start reproducing and raising cubs, their growth rate slows considerably around here. But adult males, their growth rate doesn't slow nearly as much until they're really kind of in their mid-teens. They just have so much salmon available to them that allows their bodies to grow so big. And these bears are, on average, about as big as Kodiak bears. Not quite, but pretty darn close. I mean, if you're looking anywhere else in North America for bears that are comparable in size to Kodiak bears, the Alaska Peninsula, Katmai National Park is one of the better places to look.
So you mentioned that when female bears have cubs, their growth rate slows. So is it advantageous for females to not get pregnant at such a young age?
Perhaps, but they don't have much of an active choice in the matter. I think that's
I'm just thinking about biologically, is it
Right.
advantageous?
Right.
For instance, I think of Grazer, who is a fairly large female, and she was not a young mother. She was kind of prime age, right, to become a mother?
I can't remember at what age she was when she had her first litter. I think that was 2016, so that would place her around 11, at least that we know of. Mm-hmm. It's possible she conceived, gave birth, and maybe didn't know, and for some reason her cubs died on the way or before she got to Brooks River. So that's always a possibility. So there are a lot of variables involved, but yeah, if you're raising offspring, the bottom line is you're spending a lot of energy raising your cubs, and you're not. And that's less energy that's available to gaining your own, your own body mass.
Yeah.
812 here, not very hungry. It seems like. I mean, he's being very patient. But a lot of fish, it looks like, are coming in well within reach of him, and he's just not making an active move to catch any of them.
And he is very good at fishing the lip. This is not an amateur up there.
Yeah, he's young, but yeah, certainly an excellent angler in the local Brooks Falls. Also brought to this location by his mom, number 402.
Who is an excellent fisher on the lip and brings her cubs here actually as spring cubs, which not a lot of sows do. And she's I like to call her a great multitasker. So this bear has witnessed how to fish at the lip of the falls since it was very, very young. And there we go, success.
You can see the salmon are quite slippery. The bear holding, its fish with one paw against the other forearm, the opposite forearm. Now he's moving to a more comfortable spot, maybe where he can bite into the head. The brain is one of the areas of the fish that contains a lot of fat. It's a fatty organ. So bears will often eat the brain. Sometimes that's the only thing they'll eat when they're really well fed. They especially prefer the roe and then also the skin too.
How wide was your shot before? Because the bear down here below, when we were talking about 812, did a dash and grab and actually got a fish in the water, which we haven't really seen because the water recently, because the water's deep and there haven't been a lot of salmon. So maybe he'll do it again. Whoop.
Yeah, a little bit of a pounce in the water there, looking to be hopeful and just trap a salmon underneath its paws. And that's when you're running through the water, you have to find salmon in a vulnerable position, maybe where they can't see you coming. Again, if you're a brown bear fishing, or the densities of salmon have to be really high for that technique to be successful on a regular basis. Down at the mouth of Brooks River, where we have the lower river and the river watch camera, in years where the water level is much, much lower, several feet lower than what we have this year, when we have a lot of salmon moving through that area in shallow water, that can create some good fishing conditions for bears who are good at that charging technique, that dash and grab through the water. But we have seen none of that this year because the bears recognize it's just the water down there is too deep. It's not worth the effort. One bear that we haven't seen so far during the broadcast, and maybe we haven't talked too much about in the past because it's kind of a small bear, hovers on the fringes. This is an adult female, although she's quite small for an adult female. This is number 717. She has, Naomi, what's the term for like a word that's spelled the same backwards and forwards? Do you remember? Palindrome. Okay, that's the word I was thinking of. Thank you.
Ranger Leon got that
thanks
one. Thank you.
Ranger Leon for that. I think the appearance of this bear as a palindrome bear, because she's kind of blonder, or kind of like a brown blonde in front, but her shoulders and mid quarters areas are whiter in color, and then a little bit darker towards the rump.
She's very distinctive.
Very distinctive, yeah. Pointy muzzle, blonde ears.
Oh, she got a fish.
But a bear that just has not grown very large. So we have a lot of big bears here in Katmai National Park, but not all of them are genetically inclined to grow very big. Just like in people, some people don't grow very large. I'm not the biggest guy. I like to say I'm very massive though. I'm not very tall, but I'm like a black hole, neutron star. I'm just really dense. Not in a mental way, but...
Well, I don't know. Maybe both ways. Maybe you're dense both ways, Mike.
But so some bears in Katmai here will probably never grow into super large individuals. And I think 717 is an example of that.
And she's successful too.
Not very hungry for her either. I mean, she ignored several salmon carcasses on the island. Maybe she's going over to check them out now. Maybe she just didn't notice those. Oh, she happened to see something in the water there that looked tasty. But again, just like all the other bears that we've seen this evening, if she was hungry, that salmon carcass that she's standing above right now on the rock would not be there. She would have quickly scavenged that. Looking behind me, I haven't seen the return of 856 or 911 yet. Maybe they're still doing their thing somewhere off in the forest.
Yeah. Poor 911.
812 on the lip, catching another salmon, biting into the brain case, eating the brain out.
He may be hungrier than we think because he's going to go maybe back to his rock table. I was just about to say, he likes to bring his fish a little bit away from the lip to eat it.
We often will see him eat his fish on those boulders that are behind him. Not this evening, though. Seems like he's comfortable where he is. I wonder if using those rocks behind him as a dinner table almost is something he'll do when he wants to secure his salmon from other bears. I mean, you're standing on the edge of the lip like that. It's easy to get pushed over the falls. Yeah. If another bear would happen to come in and surprise you or challenge you, it's easy to lose your salmon and drop it over the side. 717 running into the water looking to try to catch a fish, not being successful that time at least.
So we're seeing these smaller and younger bears do this kind of dash and grab, but they can't be that hungry because there's all this salmon around that they're not eating.
Yeah, so practice, maybe a little bit of play, instinct that says there's food here, you got to catch it, even if they can't fit it in their stomachs. We'll look way downstream now. We'll get a glimpse of 747 way, way downstream. Beyond the riffles, you see one bear sitting in the riffles. And then almost at the edge of the river, way downstream, a large dark object moving through. And that's number 747. Maybe he'll eventually wander up here. We have about 13 minutes left in our broadcast. And certainly we'll like to highlight him or any of the other large bears that come into our vicinity in that remaining time.
He may want to push that other bear away first since he's been throwing his weight around. But I do hope he comes up here before the end of the broadcast.
So 717 pulling a partly eaten salmon carcass out of the water. Maybe this is a fresher kill. Perhaps one that 911 or 812 on the lip ate earlier. While she's eating that, let's take a look downstream. There's another small bear. This is an independent juvenile bear, pretty young one, Naomi. I know people have speculated maybe this could be one of the 402 offspring from a couple of years ago that she weaned last year. I'm not sure, but certainly a thin-bodied bear overall, not unhealthily so. No. I mean, this bear doesn't look unwell at all. It's just thin, and that's pretty typical for young bears this time of the year.
I mean, I think you could be right because last year her offspring, well, 402s as I called them, were lean at this time of year and kind of lanky and gawky looking.
Just out of our line of sight in the trees. Thought maybe it would come in our direction. I'll keep an eye out to my right. (717) standing, looking for fish in the water. You'll see bears in movies do that, and it's often accompanied by some startling roar. But bears in the wild really don't stand up and roar like that. They probably could, but when they stand up, they're really just kind of looking around. They're trying to get a different perspective on whatever's catching their attention.
We see that a lot in the areas of high grass, in the meadows, in the marsh, where a bear might smell something, but they can't really see another bear, and especially the mothers, they'll stand up and look around.
Okay, now where a younger bear looks like is coming back right now. See, this one is very blonde, long muzzle on it. Again, kind of lanky, thin neck, very subadult-like in its appearance. And those subadults are independent juvenile bears they're not quite sexually mature. They're usually between 2 and 5 years old. Just gonna walk right beneath us here. I thought, there it is. Okay.
Now, from a distance, that bear looks kind of small, but it's pretty big.
Right, yeah, hard to get a perspective, looking at it through the camera here. But yeah, this is not a small bear. I mean, when you see them on the ground too, when you're on the trail or something like that here, they all look big. They're all intimidating in their size compared to a person.
I mean, the other big change that we've seen in the last few days here is that we're seeing more of the younger bears and family groups come up here. They've mostly been staying away from the falls because there haven't been a lot of salmon, or they'll stay at the fringes of the falls. But a bear like this now can approach here and get something to eat.
Great opportunity for it to scavenge fish, get its fill. This bear being very picky, kind of wondering what it's searching for, but it's in the brain, the head region, so maybe it's looking for a little bit of brain there. You can see it flinch there as it caught sight of 717 in the water.
Even though she's probably smaller than he is.
The subadult bears are generally rank at the bottom of the bear hierarchy. So they're displaced frequently from food resources. Larger bears are a physical threat to them. They want to stay away from those threats. It makes it a little harder for them to, gain access to the much preferred fishing spots. But that's a life stage that all bears have to go through. When we see these big adults here, the successful adults, they're all ones that went through this life stage. And believe it or not, like 856, 747, they were all little bears like that. They're all tiny, cute little cubs at some point in time. So they've experienced the same growing pains as these other young bears that we're watching at the falls today.
I think growing pains is how I think of a subadult's life. Physically, mentally, so many challenges. So they have an opportunity now. It's been, the big guys have been able to rest for a while, although they are in the periphery. Even the gulls are not attacking the remnants of the salmon. They're pretty full.
Yeah, it's a scene of abundance today. Bears are full, the birds are full. The fish in the water are probably getting full as well, maybe picking off bits of salmon flesh. Salmon flesh is part of the diet of, let's say, a juvenile rainbow trout, sometimes even juvenile salmon.
Are there a number of juvenile salmon around here?
The sockeye salmon generally don't use rivers as and streams as their primary rearing habitat as juveniles, mostly in lakes. So they'll be out in Naknek Lake, or they'll be in Lake Brooks feeding mostly on plankton there. But there could be other salmon here that do use rivers and streams, like the coho, or sometimes called silver salmon in this area. They will spend a lot of time their juvenile years in fresh water in rivers and streams. So certainly they could be here. Every once in a while we get maybe a king salmon or something like that up here too. So it's possible there could be a few of those in the water as well. (717) repeatedly going back to this same rock to stand. And we see bears standing on rocks every once in a while. I suspect that it's kind of a more comfortable place for them. Well, the water's cold. Maybe they don't like the uneven feel of the gravel underneath their feet.
Could also be a good perch to look down at the salmon
maybe
as
help
well.
them. Certainly may help them get a better view into the water. Another bear closer to the far side of the waterfall, trying to chase down fish. But again, another bear that's also not very hungry, just kind of practicing its craft.
So what would that bear be doing if it were really hungry?
Well, first it would go to all the places where there are salmon carcasses, and it would eat all those. So it would not ignore any of the salmon carcasses on the island. It would sniff those out. We probably would see it fishing with more intensity as well. That's another thing that you can sometimes see when the bears are running through the water. There just seems to be an intensity and energy to that when they're very hungry and motivated to catch fish that we don't quite see when they're catching a lot of salmon like right now. And a couple minutes left in our broadcast, Naomi, but we'll go downstream here in just a second. So we're going to look at, looks like number 708. She's nicknamed Amelia. She just moved out of our line of sight. She's kind of at the edge of the trees there with her two and a half year old cubs, so cubs in their third summer. Hiding in the trees over there as well, moving out into the river, is 151 Walker. Maybe he'll give us a better view.
Even on a night like this where there aren't that many bears at the falls, there's so much going on.
Definitely a day of abundance, wouldn't you say?
Yes. I mean, it's July 13th. I've been here since May, and really the last couple of days are the first time I've seen salmon jumping at the falls pretty constantly, so that's good news around here.
And now that younger bear that was on the far side, on the lip, maybe in a weird and odd position, one that I haven't really seen a bear catch fish at. Again, it's an experimental process for them. That bear's smaller than 812. Maybe it just doesn't want to get over there and try to compete for that fishing spot as closely.
And doesn't know, maybe, really,
But it's watching, it's observing. This is, we learn along with the bears. We get to follow their lives here on Bear Cam in Katmai National Park. I'd like to thank my co-host today, Ranger Naomi Boak from Katmai National Park. for joining me today and talking bears and salmon. We'll be back online tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to talk about the teenagers of the bear world, those sub-adult bears. So join us right here on the live chat channel for that broadcast. Until then, enjoy the bears, enjoy the webcams. My name is Mike FITZ, and we'll talk to you soon.